What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I am your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest, Danielle Orsino. Had a real good time talking with her. She is another guest that you have heard me talk about this the last couple of weeks on certain guests. She's another one that I got linked up to on podmatch.com. Again, they're not an affiliate of the show. I'm not sponsored or anything like that. It's just a tool that I recommend for all podcasters who need help getting guests. And I necessarily don't need help getting guests. I actually have quite a long waiting list. I'm not saying that to brag or whatever. It's just that there's a lot of podcasting's hot right now. So it's not like it's me, people want to get on my show. It's just I have people hitting me up all the time. But I'd like to switch it up. Like, I don't like doing too much of one thing at one point in time. Obviously, in October, we're in spooky season. There's a theme to this month. So everything's kind of tied in, whether it be fantasy writer, like we're talking to today with Danielle, which we'll get into more of that later, or musicians of the horrorcore variety, whatever. There's a theme to this month like there was last year, and there will be next year when I'm doing this. But I don't like having too many back to back. So a lot of my contacts are, usually lumped into a certain thing. And I just got to this point where I was like, I need to meet people that I've never met before. I need to get connected, and getting on Facebook groups are okay, but 9 times out of 10, and anybody that's had to deal with this will know exactly what I mean. 9 times out of 10, when you post to a Facebook group, hey, I'm looking for somebody, they want to set you up to their mailing list, or it's somebody who's a spammer, or go, I've got this contact who, I represent, and then you never hear from them again after, you connect or whatever. It's just a lot of scams on Facebook groups. So I had heard about podmatch.com for a really long time. Gave it a chance to get on there and really see what they could do. And man, it's worked wonders. And she's actually my third guest that I've had on this show now through podmatch.com. Again, not an affiliate, not sponsoring, just a really good tool for podcasters that I have found. So if you are a podcaster out there, definitely look it up. And if you have any information or questions on that, you feel free to message me, email me, whatever, and I'll get you connected where you need to go. But real good tool. And that's how I found Danielle today. So anyway, I was really happy to talk to her. It's one of the few that, I wasn't sure what to go into because I don't have any fantasy novelists that I've done on this show. So I was kind of like nervous from my perspective, like, man, I hope I can come up with some questions. But our conversation just became so natural because she's not only a fantasy novelist, she is a championship martial artist, and I don't want to give away too much, but this girl is just like me in the fact that she has done so many things in her life that the conversation just came natural, and I loved her energy, and real happy with how this product turned out, and I know you will be too. But anyway, enough of my babbling. Let's get a word from my actual sponsors, and then my interview with Danielle Orsino. Let's do it, y'all! Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here for W Energy, my sponsors. Now, what is W Energy, you might ask? W Energy is clean, jitterless energy. Better than the canned stuff that you would get at your convenience stores, your gas stations, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have all that trash in it. Now, how do I know? Because I myself use W Energy. So what I've got here, a couple of limited edition flavors. For instance, W Energy puts out this stuff called Grandpa's Ginger Water. I know it don't sound that great, but it is amazing. Limited run that they came out that I've got actually multiple tubs of. I believe in W Energy. I use W Energy myself. Also, this was just released, and it's another limited edition flavor that they come out with, and it's called Pom Blom. It's pomegranate blossom. Real nice, clean flavor. And a lot of W Energy, whether it be classics like Calio Cream or the Dub Sludge, whatever it might be, it is clean energy. It's not going to make you feel all crappy at the end of the day after using it. Now, here's what I want you to do, because again, they're obviously a sponsor of mine. But what I want you to do is I want you to go to www.w.gg, order one of the sampler packs, which you get one of these cool tumblers, a part of the sampler pack. And I want you to grab one, but don't use my promo code. That's right. don't use my promo code who else at checkout because I want you to try it without thinking I'm just trying to sell you a bill of goods. Try it one time, and then when you go back to buy your second order of W Energy, then use my promo code who else at checkout for a 10% discount, because all you're gonna do is try it. I know you're gonna love it. That's how much I believe in this product, and I thank them for sponsoring the show today. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I am your host, Jay, who else but me, and my guest today is an award-winning bestseller on Amazon, a champion martial artist, kind of interested to find out more about that, which we'll get to that here in a little bit, the author of the Birth of Faye series, and somebody that I am really looking forward to talking to and getting her story. It is Danielle Orsino. How are we doing today, my friend?
I'm ready to rock and roll and get into everything today.
Awesome. Well, this is one of my favorite kind of interviews to do because this is absolutely what I would call a cold interview, meaning I don't know much about my guest today. I've just done some research on them, asked her to be on, and she graciously accepted. But again, this is one of my favorite kind of episodes because I get to learn right along with everybody else everything about them. I've dug into your bio, obviously, and I've seen some things that I'm really, really interested to find out more. So let's go ahead and start at the very beginning. Go ahead and give everybody here a background on you and kind of how you started on your journey to be where you are today.
I have what I call a very unorthodox origin story. I started out in martial arts and then somehow wound up into nursing. I always say first I have to beat them up and then I patch them up, you know? And then in between that, I did personal training and all this other stuff because you had every injury in the world. And then somehow wound up here writing. And it's a lot of different little jumps to get there, and I kind of joke that the universe kept throwing rocks at me going, "No, no, no, you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong path." And kind of like Wile E. Coyote, finally, it just dropped the boulder and
Sure,
was like,
right.
"Now will you listen to us? Thanks." And I wound up here. And even now, as I get here, there's still rocks coming at me. I had originally called my series Birth of the Fae, and then I was pirated by Meta. And Meta stole the whole entire series into its shadow library. And so my lawyers were like, yeah, you got to change that. And it is now known as the Legacies of Light and Dark. And when my readers got it, they were like, oh my God, that's it. And I'm like, yeah, it is pretty good. And it was one of those moments again where I was looking around going, damn universe, and it just did it again. So, my journey here has been completely unorthodox, and if I wrote a comic book, I would be, it's kind of like one of those Spider-Man moments where I got bit, and then I woke up going, "I don't need these glasses anymore. Oh my God," and I have
Sure.
like the wrestling moment, and I beat the guy, and then Uncle Ben dies. So, it's just one of those like full of tragedies things. It's not that clean cut.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally understand that perspective because as a little kid, I thought 100% for sure I was going to be a professional wrestler. And that somehow turned into doing music, which somehow turned into doing podcasting. So it's strange how, and I think this is obviously isn't something I had in my notes, but I think that's something that a lot of people get stuck on is like they don't really go with the ebb and flow of life when life is kind of like, hey, you need to be over here. They're like, but I want to be here. Well, sometimes where you want to be isn't really where you should be. So I totally
Exactly.
understand that for sure. Well, let's go ahead and go back real quick because I'm interested to
Mhm.
find out your martial arts background as somebody who's a fan of combat sports, MMA, obviously, like I said, professional wrestling, if you can classify it that, I guess. But I'm interested to find that out. What made you interested in martial arts, and what was kind of the style that you trained in?
Same thing, I didn't mean to go into it. I mean, I was a comic book geek from, like, day 1. So, of course, Linda Carter, Adam West, Eartha Kitt, you know, Bruce Lee. That's what I grew up on. Did I ever think I'd wind up there? No. Long story short, I wanted to go to New Orleans with my friend Jen because we were reading a bunch of Anne Rice novels, 18 years old. I'm like, yeah, sure. And my dad was like, there's no way in heck my 18-year-old kid is going to New Orleans with her best friend that I've known, since sixth grade. He knew exactly what our little minds were up to. And so the bet was if you get your yellow belt, I'll let you go. And he was like, there is no way she's doing it. And I walked into my gym, which happened to have a Taekwondo class. and
Mm.
walked in and made every mistake you can imagine. Wore a crop top. It's just a sports bra and like some sweatpants, chewing gum, full face of makeup. Walked right in front of all the black belts, stood all the way at the senior end, hand on the chip, chewing gum. And I was like, I'm here to take the karate class, the whole thing. The instructor was like, and everybody just took one big step away from me, which should have been the big, like, danger, danger. And the instructor walked in and was like, "You're what?" I'm like, "I'm here to take karate or something." Just the whole, and he was like, "Really?" He's like, "You should be standing at the other end." I'm like, "There's kids there. I'm an adult." Not thinking, like, look at the belts.
Right,
And he
right,
was
right.
like, and I just remember the evil laugh came out of him. And he's like, "Oh, come here, you." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Went over and he was like, "Can you do a push up?" And dumb me once again went, "Yeah, and not on a girly one. Like I do real ones." And he was like, "Oh, goody." And it was a hardwood, like multi-purpose aerobic room. And he was like, "Good, show me." And I did it. And he's like, "Could you do one on your knuckles?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Huh. And I did a couple. And he's like, "Hold it." And I remember like falling and going, "What?" And he was like, "Hold it." And for some reason it clicked like this man means business. And I got on my knuckles and held it. And he just walked away and I fell again. I was like, "Where are you going?" And he walked back. He was like, "Oh, no, no, no. Hold it until I get back." And then I was like, Yeah, okay." And he was like, "No, no, yeah." And I remember being like, "Sensei?" And he's like, "No, we take Taekwondo. That's Korean. It's Sabanim." And I'm like, so, and he's like, "That's okay. Just hold it." And he just walked away. And somewhere in my head, it was like, I might die tonight. I don't know. But like all of a sudden things got real. And I
Right,
remember
right.
holding it and sweating. And I don't know how long I was down there, but it was longer than my little body expected. And he came back and he was like, "So here's what we're going to do. You're going to go get a top that covers you, wash the makeup off your face. And if you want to learn Taekwondo, you're going to come back here." And I remember going, "Yes, and he goes, "Sir, sir." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And I went back, and I don't know why I went back. I went back, did everything he said, and I came back, and I remember the shocked look on his face that I came back. And he was like, "Okay, we got something here." And then 10 years later, I was still with him, and I only paid for the first month. And that was it. I competed, and the same thing. I never knew I was going to compete. He threw me in, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah. So how did that transition from that to the rest of what you ended up getting into?
After I started competing, I started noticing wushu, kung fu, and I'm like, "What are they all doing?" That looks really cool. Because I was ITF style, the original Taekwondo. I wasn't like Olympic style.
Yeah.
And my instructor never let me do the splits, the flips. I had to win traditionally. If I couldn't win traditional, there was no way he was letting me do fancy stuff. So I
Mm.
had to place first. And then he was like, "Now I'll let you throw a split in. Okay, now we can start talking about other things." And I'm like, "I want that other stuff." And then I saw somebody dressed as a Shaolin in a Shaolin monk uniform do wushu. And I was like, What is this?" I'm like, "My calling has come." I'm like, "What are you doing? I need all of this." And I was at a tournament. My instructor never went with me to tournaments. He was like, "If you want to do this, you're going to do this on your own." I drove up and down like the Northeast, and I met Vincent Lin. He came up to me, watched me, and he was like, "Let's you and I talk." And Vincent introduced me to Soily Foot Kung Fu, started training me. He really wanted me to go with Ah Ping for Wushu, but he first started me in Kung Fu. And then from there, I'm like, I love this. Like, I love the acrobatic movement, more the fluidity. I could not stand Tai Chi no matter how much that man taught me. I would be done like Speedy Gonzalez, 2 seconds flat, and he'd be looking at me going, "That form takes 10 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, anyway." And he would be like, "Okay, I can't teach you kung fu." Like, no, no. And I did that. And then from there, transitioned into long fist kung fu, wushu, did some mixed martial arts, boxing at Lone Wolf Boxing Gym, then went down to Ultimate Gym in Charlotte with Doug, did Muay Thai. and just kept going. But I wound up competing at the World Championships doing Eagle Claw wushu. And that was like, because that was just me being like, okay, I've won everything in hard style. I need to do something in soft style. And I retired still doing wushu just because, let's just break the body a little bit more. Why not? Let's do a suicide flip at 35 years old because that's what we should all be doing, you know. And I had a couple close calls, a lot of close calls with wushu. I would never suggest doing wushu at that age. I coached with Jing Bong Joon down in Chantilly, Virginia, and I remember somebody I was training with went, "How old is too old to start wushu?" And I looked at them, I shot them a death glare because I'm like, "Don't tell them my age," and they were like, and he was like, "I don't know." And he's going on because he was on like the Wushu team like Jet Li. And I'm just sitting there
Mm.
and I was like, he's the ambassador to demonstrate form I'm doing. This is like royalty in my eyes. And they're like, "Would you teach it to a 30-year-old?" And he's like, "Beginning?" And they're like, "Yeah." And he just starts laughing. I mean, like doubled over hysterical laughing. He's like, "No, no, 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 no. They break." And I'm like, "You mother effers. You mother effers." Meanwhile, I couldn't get in the van. Like, I needed somebody to help me after 4 hours of training with him. I was sore for weeks. I mean, weeks. I've never been that sore in my life. It was the most amazing experience. I say that now. But yeah, at the time, I hated everybody, but it was crazy. I loved everything that martial arts has given me. Absolutely every moment of it I've loved. I say that now because it's in the past.
Right.
But yeah, I've loved everything and it's helped me with writing tremendously. I mean, all my fight scenes I've choreographed with the help of my puppies, but I film them and then I write them so I can see them from every point of view. Uh, and then I can decide should it be from the attacker's point of view, the assailant, the victims. I don't write big sweeping battle scenes because I don't know how to ride horses. I don't know how to shoot a bow and arrow. So I don't write those things. The weapons are all weapons I know. So martial arts is played into everything I do.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go ahead and talk about that journey of how you decided to become a writer, and then tell us a little bit why you decided to go the path that you did with your writing style, which I'll let you explain for those who don't know.
Um, my path to writing was not something I set out to do. I was never thinking, oh, one day I'll be a writer. A lot of people don't know I did have a writing contract way back when to do a fashion book called Running with Scissors. Of course, it would be something violent. But I didn't, because I was doing a lot of fashion commentary and writing for some magazines. But fiction, no, I never thought I would do it. I went into nursing, met a patient, and he just didn't want to drip anymore. He didn't want to do the IV infusions. It was for Lyme disease, and he was doing these IV infusions every single day. He had struck a deal with the doctor because he had moved up from a couple states away. And basically, she was like, "You have to stay on this or else you could relapse." And so he was like, his deal was, "Well, I'll come up on a Thursday, on a Wednesday, turn around, go home, come back on Thursday and drip Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday morning, turn around and go back." So he was only like really missing one day. And so, and he was driving like 5 hours. So finally, after 2 weeks, he's like, "I don't want to do this anymore." And he's like, "Danny, entertain me, keep me in the chair." So I said, "Well, tell me something interesting." And after he'd been there a year and a half, he said, "Well, I was recruited by the CIA out of college." I'm like, "Well, how did this not come up? I mean, we've argued about the Ravens and the Giants for like a year and a half. How did the CIA not come up?" And we made some jokes about, Roswell and conspiracy theories and all this. And for some reason, I said, "Well, you know where Lyme disease comes from?" And he was like, "Oh, Plum Island, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "No, the Fae." I don't know why I said it. To this day, I wasn't reading books about the Fae. I wasn't into like fairy books. I was back on my vampire kick. And he was like, "Well, who are the Fae?" And I'm like, "Oh, angels who were couldn't go back home after the war with Lucifer." Why I said that. And I just kept going. And then I'm like, "But I know why you're here. You're here to find out if the nurse is a fey human hybrid." I don't know. I just made up a story. And then I just put him in the story. And we just kept talking about it every time he came in. And the story wove itself. And he was like, go home and write this down. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to physician assistant school. I'm going to pump some faces full of Restylane, and that's going to be the rest of my life. Leave me alone. And the universe went, oh, no, no, my dear. No, that's not what's going to happen. And it decided that I would be allergic to an entire class of drugs called cephalosporins, and I would be anaphylactic. And it put me into anaphylactic shock at work one day. And yes, I had a needle stick accident, and the doctor was like, okay, we have to give you Rocephin, which was the drug that we had been using. I had been there for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I kept getting hives and I was having shortness of breath. And they kept saying, well, it's because we're in a basement. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. The minute they pushed it through, it was probably within 2 minutes. They walked out of the room, and I just felt all of a sudden like I was breathing through a stirring stick.
Mm.
And I was like, what the heck is, and I'm looking around and I just started banging on the wall because I couldn't talk. I couldn't get anything out. And I just remember the receptionist coming in and taking one look at me and yelling, she's blue. And in my head, I thought, I'm not that short. I'm not a smurf. And then I realized, oh my God, it's me. Like, I can't breathe. And the doctor came in and I watched her face go pale. And she went, I've never lost one due to anaphylaxis. And I'm like, lose one. And then I looked at the couch and I thought, I don't want to put my face on it. And I just like I unfolded my IV sheet and put it down. And I was like, because if I'm going to pass out, I don't want to put my face there. And I just knew like this was not going to go well for me. And then I just started thinking about imagine being choked out in mixed martial arts. Like I knew it. And I was like, slow down my breathing, calm down. And all of a sudden the room just went crazy and people started getting needles out, and they were like, do we have to call 911? And I'm like, they're talking about me, this is bad.
Yeah.
And I went into anaphylaxis, and then the doctor sent me to an allergist, and he was like, you are not just allergic to this drug, you are allergic to the entire class of drugs like no one I had ever seen before. He was like, you are a girl with a peanut allergy working in a peanut butter making factory. He's like, you have to get out of that
Mm.
job. And I'm like, oh, I was like, "No, I'm going to PA school." I'd already been accepted into a program, and he was like, "No, you're not." He's like, "No, you're out of healthcare. This is a big no-no." I still thought I was gonna go. Went and gave in. I was like, "I'm gonna go." Called I had already started writing the book, called the head of admissions, spoke to him, and he was like, "Honey, go do yourself a favor, go write your book." He's like, "Go bet, he's like, "Go bet on red." I remember you have red hair. He's like, "Go bet on red." He's like, "No, don't do this."
Yeah.
And the universe was like, we told you. Like, sorry we had to drop this brick on you, but kind of told you. And then I started this writing journey.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty crazy that you didn't know that, and it took an almost near death experience to figure that out. That's I
Yeah.
don't even normally I've got a lot to follow up on with stuff like that, but I don't even know what to say. Like how would you react to the thing that you thought you were going to do for the rest of your life could kill you, you know?
It was that moment of I'm on the wrong path. And I felt like a salmon swimming upstream. I
Yeah.
just kept fighting against the current. And then I looked and I realized there were a bunch of signs, but I just ignored them.
Yeah, sure.
And I
Yeah.
was like, oh. And I finally sat back and I went, I'm listening. Like I just
Yeah.
stopped and I got still and I'm like, okay, I'm listening now. What do
Right.
I do? And
Right.
just kind of chilled. But it took a lot because I thought if I didn't hustle, I wasn't I wasn't utilizing talents. Like I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't being productive in society. You kind of have that stigma.
Right.
So I thought that's what it was. And I wanted to take the logical path. I mean, it as you were saying, you thought you'd be a professional wrestler. Like when you do something athletic, there's always that pivot to now go be
Right.
logical. And that's what I thought I was doing. I was like, all right, I'm done competing. I'm not going to go open up a martial arts school. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Let's calm down. I don't have to go fight anymore. And then the universe was like, really? All those times that you were writing or you were doing something creative, you don't want to go follow that. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not logical. That's not steady. And that's where I went. And then, even then, it just slapped me upside the head and went, no, nope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I noticed at the beginning of that you said that you were doing some commentary writing as far as fashion goes. And before your incident, you already started writing your book. So I kind of wanted to touch on those two things
Mhm.
because those seem, and I could be wrong here, this is just the outsider. I can barely even write with my literal hand, nonetheless, write a whole story. But I would think that that kind of a writing style between magazine, I guess, for lack of better words, magazine commentary on fashion to actually writing stories, two completely separate different monsters. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But if I'm right, was it hard for you to transition from that style of writing to the other, or is that something you've always kind of dabbled in as far as like writing actual stories, or what was that transition hard at all for you, or how did that go?
Here's the thing, a lot of people didn't know I was writing the commentary because I was doing it under an alias named DQ, Drama Queen. And I was writing these fun little comic kind of articles like, you know, the 5 best drama queens in TV history. And I'd have Lucille Ball, and, like all these different things. And it was always done with a snarky, little bit of an irreverent kind of take. But in a way, it was still fantasy because nobody knew it was me.
Right.
So I was always hiding behind something.
Okay.
Uh, so I don't think people ever put it together. There was even the picture was even a caricature. So nobody knew. I remember when the editor called me and got me on the phone, she went, "Oh my God, you're a woman?" I went, she goes, "I thought you were a gay man." And I was like, "I'm gonna take that as a huge compliment." And she's like, "I thought this was a gay man." And I'm like, "No." She's like, "DQ's a woman." And I'm like, "Picture's a woman." Like, it was a cute little, like, girl, like a cute little dress, and she was a redhead, and, it was done like a that girl kinda thing, and she was like, "Oh, okay, alright," it was so I think I was kind of in a way writing fantasy, I just did it a little differently, and my fashion commentary was different. It was Andy Cohen, The Real Housewives, like, on the reunion couch before then, like, that's what I was doing about fashion, I just I didn't know it. So I always had a very different take. Translating to it, I just didn't know what I was doing. When I started writing, I kind of joke, if you want to know what not to do, come talk to me because I've made that mistake. I think it's kind of good that I didn't know what I was doing because if I tried to put it in a box, it would be 10 times worse.
Right.
Just letting it flow. I've handwritten all my books because I didn't know what I was doing. And I wrote them, most of them at the same time because I'd pick up a thing, start writing, and go, oh, they'll probably want to know about this. Grab another journal and start writing. And then I had to put the jigsaw together. That was a total mess. Fashion, I did a lot of designing and stuff. I was cosplaying. So it's all really part of the same creative tree. It's just a different branch, but you're kind of still living in your head. And I kind of joke about this, but I always talk to myself in my head. I thought a lot of people live the life of scrubs, like JD, where they're narrating their entire life. Yes, I do that. I thought everybody did that. And then I talk to other people and they're like, the world doesn't work like that. I'm like, really? You don't like, you're not like walking around being like la 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 talking in your head and and you got a theme song going or this and they're like, no, no, no. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a real life Harley Quinn. The voices don't stop. Like I always say, I want to be like Wonder Woman, but I'm probably closer to Harley on the spectrum. Like Wonder Woman's over here, all the way over on the right. Harley's on the left. Definitely like veering off with the hyenas toward the left. There's a lot of voices. I think that has helped me. The imagination has helped. So I think it wasn't as hard as it should have been because I'm a little crazy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I do relate to what you just said there as far as like just figuring it out on your own. So I started this podcast in 23, and as of this recording, it's 2025. And it was just because COVID had the band I was in before COVID. We were a national touring act, and then COVID came around and just completely derailed all of our plans like it did everybody. I know I'm not alone there, but it put an end to that entire project. So it got to a point where like I still had this creative itch to create, but I
Mhm.
didn't want to restart from scratch. I didn't want to go. I was kind of over music at that point anyway. So that was one of those things where the universe kind of pushed me into a spot where I wanted to be because, I wanted
Mhm.
to do everything I wanted to do, I did. So it was like, man, okay, I've spent all these years doing graphic design all the way back to high school. I went to a vocational school for graphic design. I've worked with Photoshop this whole time. I obviously know audio editing, video editing. I taught myself to do for our own music videos and stuff. And
Mhm.
I was like, man, how can I scratch this itch? And I was like, podcasting. Everybody's getting into technology due to COVID was just running rampant. Like all
Yes.
the podcasts online, we're dealing with it right now. Me and you right
Mhm.
now. This is a direct result of
Right.
COVID
Exactly.
technology, right? And I started to kind of like do research on how to do it, and I'm like, man, no, I'm not gonna take anyone else's style. I'm gonna do it my own way, and I'm gonna find my own. But now I've taken advice from people for sure,
Mhm.
but I figured out what works best for me, and I feel like that's why I'm in the spot where I'm in now, where I've got something that I would consider successful. People
Mhm.
tune in every week to see what I got to say. More and more strangers all the time are coming and checking out the show, and
That's
I did
awesome.
it doing my own route. So I totally understand what you're saying there. And as far as your motivation of just stopping and okay, well, I'm going to write down, like you said, put the jigsaw pieces together. Is it all based on just ideas that come to you, or is there certain things like that motivates you? Do you like find yourself, do you find a quiet corner in your house and you create, or is it all just spontaneous, like, oh, I've got this idea and you write it down? Or how does that creative process go for you when you're trying to come up with ideas for your product?
For the series, for Legacies of Light and Dark, I started writing uh what will be book one of volume two, A Fool's Journey. That comes out in November. That was the book I originally started writing. I sat down to
Mm,
write that about Agent Graham, who is my patient. It's based on my patient and the Preternatural Surveillance Division, this division of the CIA that deals with all the national security issues for the United States that is supernatural. That's what I set out to do based on him and I meeting. So I set to do that story. And as I started writing it, I was like, oh, but they're going to want to know where the Fae came from. And I pick up another journal and start writing it. And as I start writing, I go, oh, but they're going to want to know about the king and queen. And I pick up another one and I just kept writing.
mm,
I had no set, like, oh, here is my outline, chapter one. No, no,
right.
no, no, no. There was no, that meme of like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's got like the board and the
Mm-hmm.
lines. That would probably be me, but I'm not that organized. But that's
Right.
probably what the inside of my head looked like. So I just kind of started writing and the story unfolded. I kind of call it just a download of information. I am just the custodian of these characters. They come to me and they tell me what to do. And then I'm like, oh, okay, guys, that's what you want today? Got it. All right, cool. Because I'm dyslexic, King Jarvok, who's the king of the Dark Fae, his original name was like Farjuk. But when I got to the computer, Jarvok came out. And I could literally in my head hear him go, "Oh my God, that's such a better name. Thank you." It's like things like that where other things started. My favorite character, Indiga, is a little 6-year-old. I never planned on writing kids in my story. 3 a.m., Cherry Bomb, the song comes in my head, and this little blonde girl with curls comes skipping through, and she's like, "Excuse me, my name's Indiga. My nickname's Little Big Mouth. Get up and write my story." And derailed half my story because I'm like, what? She's like, okay, so I'm Ward's niece and I'm a pain in the neck. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And it just went. So my creative process is loud. I have to have like RuPaul's Drag Race, The Real Housewives, something going on that's like loud and obnoxious. Um, all my books have a some kind of like theme. I go on Spotify and I make a playlist. And that's usually the emotional crescendo of the book. because I need to have songs going on. I kind of, each chapter has a song in my head, and sometimes it's even the battle scenes. And it's not always like, I know a lot of people like, they like classical music to their stuff. In my head, sometimes it's like New Kids on the Block, Please Don't Go Girl. And I'm like, yeah, I see an elbow smash going on here, you know, because I'm looking at it from this thematic kind of slow motion. And I like these things that don't quite make sense, but you can see it in your head and you're like, yeah, that would look really cool. My sense of humor can be very dark. And even though I'm writing fantasy, I will break the fourth wall. I will put pop culture references in, and I enjoy that because I'm a Gen Xer. And so I do that and people get mad at me. And then some people, usually my Gen Xers, love it. But in the beginning of each book, starting after book two, Thine Eyes of Mercy, there's a prologue and it's a message from the narrator. So he kind of does his Andy Cohen like recap, like, okay, guys, so this is what happened in last book. This one slept with this one did this. And then he puts pop culture references. And then the following pages, message from your narrator, did you catch my references? And then tells you what they were. So he'll say something like, they're playing their war games. And then the next one is like, okay, War Games is a movie with Matthew Broderick, who, by the way, married Sarah Jessica Parker. For all you people who don't know, and kind of like goes through it. And it's just a way for me to be like, all right, these are the things that influenced me.
Yeah.
So it's my little hats off, my nod to all of the shows Goonies, Labyrinth, everything that I watched, The Muppets, everything that I saw as a kid that I know has set the foundation, whether I consciously or not realize it, it's leaking in.
Yeah.
So I do little things to just be like, all right, thanks guys, because it's crowded up here and it wouldn't be without Saturday morning cartoons, great 80s movies, and all those things, and good music.
Yeah.
So it's all there. A Fool's Journey, there's a lot of music references, tons of them. Agent Graham listens to music constantly. And so there's a bunch of little references that kind of tell you what's going to come next in the story. But for me, that's part of my process.
Yeah, sure. And I totally get that too. You go through my show roster and you'll see, again, professional wrestlers, you'll see musicians, you'll see actors. It's strange when people ask, oh, who have you had on your show? And I tell them, oh, I've had on Eric Bischoff. He used to run World Championship Wrestling. And I've also had on Tom Arnold. And I've also had on Ken Shamrock. And I'm just listing all these different things. And people are like, but what's your podcast about? I'm like, everything I'm into. That's exactly what it is. I don't have a style, and because that's who I am. I can't, even when you look at like the posters behind me, I got Lincoln
Yeah.
Park right here. I
Yes.
got Ghost right here. I got a wrestler right here. I have Insane Clown Posse right here. Like, it's what I love. Like all these different things. So mixing it together, I absolutely understand that. And I think that's where the most beautiful form comes from. Not somebody, and don't get me wrong, I'm not insulting anybody who has a
No.
podcast or a
Hmm.
project or anything like that that's dedicated to one thing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But from my perspective, like you go to my Spotify playlist, uh, people can make fun of me if they want. Slipknot could pop up. Backstreet Boys could pop up. Anything could pop up. TLC could pop up. And then we
Hmm.
can go to Cradle of Filth. Like, I love that when somebody can give that kind of fluid artistic ability in their product. Absolutely. Well, one last thing I wanted to touch on specifically, because as I was looking at your bio, I was curious how this came about. You said in your bio you're an Amazon award-winning seller. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've won a couple of awards for the books. Yep. New York's NYC Big Book Award, Independent Press Awards, and then I've on my niches I've hit number one with several of the books for Amazon, which was after I left my publisher. I was able to do that. Now, while with it, but once I went on my own, I was
Yeah.
able to do it. So I was pretty. It's not easy to do, and it's hard to stay there. I've hit
Right.
it. I've hit it for like a week and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't mean you're making money though, people. I'm still broke. But don't get too excited just yet. But it's when I've done it, yeah, it's been absolutely amazing and I've loved it. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping volume two, which is I jump genres from like mythic fantasy to this paranormal urban. I'm really hoping that's like, broadens my audience. But yeah, it's been really, really cool. I've loved the awards, but I think the best thing is when somebody tells you this is my favorite book and they hold it and you're just like, I wrote that. They like
Right.
me. You still get that, really? You like it? You're kind of waiting for that. Are you sure? Because you're still like, and they're like, no, 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 I love this. And you're like, and you just kind of want to cry because somebody spent the money on you. And there's still that kind of that feeling of like they spent their hard-earned cash on you. And I think that's missing in the literary world today. There's too many people that are like, I guess I'll let you read my book. And for me, I'm like, do you want to read my book? You want to read my book? Oh my God. Okay, here's my hand. Let's go. I'm going to take you on a tour of my world. This is the most amazing thing. Can I give you anything? Like, I'm just so happy that somebody chooses my world. I want to make it the best experience possible. And I'm just so thrilled that they want to spend their time, their money, their essence in that world. And I think nowadays there's too much of this elitism because it's like, did Book Talk approve of it? Did Bookstagram say it's okay? It's like, just let people read whatever they want to read.
Yeah. And that's a problem in a lot of my fandoms. Like, case in point, we live close to this spot where we live called Crazy Martin's, and they have like about 30 pinball machines. And it's like new pinball machines where they're all like gigantic video games, right? And me and my wife
Mhm.
just decided to start going there and playing these things because I've seen them for a while. And there's an actual, and this is going to sound weird to some that don't know, there's an actual pinball community out there,
Really?
thousands upon thousands of people who are passionate about pinball and playing pinball. And you
It's
talk to
cool.
some of them and you hear some of them and some of the conversations they have, and they go, well, that's an inferior cabinet compared to this person. And they're just like breaking down the small details of the inferior machines compared to the superior ones. And this is why you shouldn't like this kind of
Oh
machine.
my
Now,
God.
again, on that same token, and it's ironic because I'm wearing a Kings Island Halloween Haunt shirt today, but there's a roller coaster enthusiast scene. Some of the most
Is
insanely
it?
negative individuals on planet Earth.
Hmm.
And it's
Yes.
this is why you shouldn't like this roller coaster, and this roller coaster is that's not a giga roller coaster. It
Crazy.
should be this, and it's just like this is all supposed to be fun.
Fun.
Why are you turning something that is designed to
Yes,
make
I
you
think the
happy?
Superman movie was the best example of it. Like Superman comes
Yes.
out and everybody's like, it's not this, it's not. And I'm like, look, I'm a Cavill fan myself.
Yeah.
Cavill
Yeah.
to me was just, I'm like, look, he was done dirty. Let's all, we can all like tip our hat off. But I'm like, can't you just say, this just be in this universe, this be in this, and can't we just enjoy the character? Can you just be happy? And just be like, oh, well, at least it's getting another shot. He's moved on to other things. That's great. He's supposedly coming back as something in the DCU and just be like, good for him. Look, the man ain't crying. He's not homeless. He's doing
Right.
just fine with his life. Let's just, like if he was out on the corner, I'd be like, okay, people, like we got something to complain about here.
Right.
But
Right.
I think he's doing okay. I'm just, my personal opinion, but I just think the toxicity level, and that's what I see happening in the book world, romantasy versus this versus that. And I'm just like, I got a book. I'm just sitting there in the corner going, I got one. Okay, I have dragons. Yes, my and I get people who are like, are they wyverns? They're dragons. And I'm like, well, technically mine are dragons. Thank you very much. And I worked with a vet and a physicist and a mechanical engineer to figure out my dragons. And yes, they fly. We actually did a flight simulator. So let's go, Neil Ticey DeGrasse, whatever the heck your name is, and bring it, okay? Because I know why mine spit fire. And I
that
just sit
was
back and
the
I'm like, let's go.
that
Because
was the
I get it
perfect
all.
example. That was so
I get
awesome.
it all. And I'm like, let's go. No, my water guy, that's a beast. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that's a water kelpie. So, and he's a cousin. That's the Grandmaster Water Kelpie, and that's cousin. to my draconians. So I spent months researching that because I wasn't having comic book guy walk in from The Simpsons and be like
Right.
page 32 and opening up my book and being like right here. I wasn't having that. So my acid, ice, and fire breather. No, I went to my vet, sat him down, and was like, "So I got an idea." And I just remember taking off his glasses, opening up the door, and going, "This is going to take a while," and closing it, and him going, "You want to make what?" And I'm like, "I'm going to design them from their digestive systems out." And then I laid out the sketches, and he went, "Actually, Danielle, this ain't bad." And it was 2 hours later, and he was like, "Okay." And I had everything written out. And he was like, and by the end of it, he has posters of all my dragons. And he was, he was happy with it. So, yeah, it gets a little nutty in there, just
Yeah.
a little.
There's a 99.99% chance that this is going to be the clip I use to promote this episode because I was fucking awesome.
No
Just,
problem. Mic
and,
drop.
yeah, mic drop, right? But I mean, that's why I try. And granted, sometimes the conversation takes you there, no matter what your intentions are. But I try so hard to keep these episodes as uplifting as possible to avoid, case in point, I had somebody critique I was talking with a music friend of mine, and we were talking about the first appearance of this group that I used to work for called Twisted. The first time they ever showed up with makeup. Now it was a generalization. Just yeah, the first time they did this show and they had makeup on their face, and undoubtedly this person just like a couple weeks ago. This episode's been out for a year and a half. Okay, the fact of the matter is over. But
Yeah, I love
this
that.
guy this guy comes out of nowhere and he goes, "That's not the first time they wore makeup." I'm like, that's not what we said. We said it was at this specific show. Not that that was the first time they ever wore makeup. Like, do you feel better? Do you feel
Yeah,
better?
exactly. Now, did that make your day? Like, do you walk around with that BD energy now that you did that? Like, what was that? I I have gotten that. Look, I've been on two blasphemy lists, but I am pushing for the third because I feel like that, that's the final strike. Um, and I have people who just attack me for things, and I'm like, do you feel good about yourself now? Like, can you lay your head down and be like, oh, golf clapping. Do you think God is up there somewhere? Jesus is golf clapping you on a cloud, being like, go get that little
Right.
redhead. You go, man. Like, what do you think is happening with that type of negativity? I guarantee that there is nobody like keeping like, little like slat scores, up there being like, you
Right.
got him.
Right.
You got it. This is somehow going to get you somewhere. I just don't think so. So I sit here with the fandom. I did a podcast. It was one of my first ones. And I was explaining the premise of the book. And somebody went, so they're all related. And I looked at it, what? So like the angels, like they're all brother and sisters. And I'm like, no. And she's like, but the creator's their father. I'm like, well, it's like God. And I was trying to not use the word
Right.
God. And she just kept backing it in that this whole thing was incestuous. And by the end of it, I was like, so I'll see you guys later. Like, it was just like one of those where I was like, we out. I can't,
Right.
you just get people who just want to do it. And I do find that in the fandom community, there's a lot of them. I see it when I cosplay all the time. And I just try to make sure that I go up to somebody always and tell them one positive thing about what they're wearing. And I find that's a great thing at New York Comic Con because I did notice everybody tries to be a little more positive, but I always find it funny when people just try to catch you on something and they're like, "Did you notice that?" And I'm like, the book's been out for like how long? What do you I can't go back and fix it. Like, what do you it's like a year. My developmental editor, Cleet Barrett Smith, said the best thing. He goes, "Your book is like your yearbook picture. At the time you do it, it's the coolest thing ever. You think you look hot. And then in about a year, maybe 5 years, maybe even a month later, you open it up and go, what the heck was I thinking?" He's like, you have to remember at that moment in time, it was the greatest thing you did. Keep it that way. It was awesome. He's like, for that moment, you poured your heart and soul. It was great. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Learn from it and move on. And it's kind of what I do. But if they want to catch me on wyverns, bring it. I got unicorns in there too. And they're like the size of a pony. I got everything. I put a bunch of creatures in there just for people to come at me. I'll tell you something funny. My mermaids, I forgot to put breasts on them. I didn't realize it till the book was done. And then I stopped and I went, I was cosplaying as my mermaid, and I went, 'cause they were asking me, they were like, "Okay, does she wear seashells?" And I'm like, I went back and looked, I'm like, um, uh, I was like, she ain't got any. And they were like, "How does she not have any?" And I'm like, I think because at the time I so didn't want her to be the Little Mermaid with seashells,
Right.
I just left it off and never mentioned it. So I had to go into like another book and mention why they did not have them because
Mm.
it was just a glaring like she ain't got breasts. Like what am I?
Right.
So all the pictures I took in cosplay, her hair is down to her hips for that reason and
Mm.
covered, so I wouldn't ever have to touch that little oopsies. So if anybody gets
Right.
me on that, that's really an oopsie. I just forgot that mermaids, you know, I yeah, I
Sure.
just left that
Yeah.
part off. So you see,
Yeah.
things happen. Things happen. Even with authors, we forget those things. We're so busy researching everything else that we don't get slipped up on. That breast can get by us. See, there's your quote. Breasts get by us.
What one last thing I'll say, since you just made it a mission, I have blatantly fucked up on some of the editing I've done here on this show. You'll notice on the very beginning of this episode, there's this whole video package and effects and all that stuff. Well,
Mhm.
once upon a time, I completely forgot to put in the video effects, and there was like a 30-minute, or not 30-minute, 30-second clip of just my logo flashing, and there's no effects, no music, no sound, no nothing. And somebody asked me about it, and they're like, man, that really threw me off when I was watching this. I didn't know you did something different. I was like, yeah, I was just seeing if this would be better to do it that way. I just completely fucking forgot to make sure it was in there. I didn't, you just get in a rhythm and
The test for
you
them.
think,
That's to tell 'em.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I've had people ask me about a character, and I've actually I called my husband once from a con and went, I have a character named Oberon. He goes, he's in the first book. And I'm like, do I kill him or something? He goes, no, he's the king of the Selkie. He fights with the Selkies. He's the polar bear. And I'm like, somebody just came up and said that's their favorite. He goes, really? He's in like 3 chapters. And I'm like, okay, that's what and I'm like, and some days people mention it, and I'm like, and I have an author index. I have an index. So I have everybody listed because I'm like, I could forget.
Sure.
There's certain ones that I know. Well, yeah, every now and then I'm like, um, do I know? And yeah, the person's like, I love Oberon. Like, are you gonna use him more? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Called him up. I was like, do I know this Oberon? And he's like, he's the polar bear king, the king of that faction. I'm like, really? I named him Oberon. And then I'm sitting there, why the heck did I use that name? I don't know why I used it. I got no clue. It sounded cool at the time. I don't know. I make up a lot of names. I, you know, I, I'd love to give you like a really cool reason.
Right.
I I don't have them. I mean, a drag queen can tell you their name and their reason better than I can tell you, like why some of these are. And I'm like, I got nothing for you. I'm so sorry. And then some of them I'm like, okay, Los the Dragon, Carlos, my Yorkie. Got it. Lady Penelope, yep, my dog. I got them. Other ones I'm like, Julio. I'm like, I think I got that off the back of a medicine bottle, but and then I combined it with something else, and those are the mistakes you make. It's a creative thing. That's the other good reason. It's a creative thing.
There you
So
go.
yeah,
There you go. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. This has been a lot of fun. I
thank
wasn't
you.
real sure where this was going to go, but I feel like this was an absolute home run. I've had an absolute blast talking to you and get to know you. I'm definitely going to be checking out your work because everything you talked about is definitely something that, is right up my alley, being somebody who's a nerd myself. And I have much respect for anybody who can create from the ground up out of nothing. So much respect to you and everything that you do. And I always give the last couple of minutes to my guests if there's anything you want to plug, websites where people can find you on social media, how they can learn more about your work, anything like that. The floor is yours.
Everybody can find me on Instagram at DM Orsino, Orsino author. That's where I'm most active. I actually have a choose your own adventure game coming out on Mythia, and you can check them out. Mythia they have a Discord. They are out on social media, on all the Instagram, on Facebook. But yes, I have a choose your own adventure game where people can jump into the veil, into my dragon world, and do a dragon tournament or into the dungeon. But you can also check me out on my website at dmorsino.com. And all my books are available on Amazon. They're all out on Kindle. And then we're re releasing all of the paperbacks everywhere. And it's The Legacies of Light and Dark, a mythic fantasy series. It's Locked Out of Heaven, Thine Eyes of Mercy, From the Ashes, Kingdom Come, A Fey is Done, Forgive Us. For those of you who are Catholic, yes, you will notice the last couple books are the Our Father. And of course, Volume 2 of Fool's Journey, a paranormal urban fantasy series, comes out November 28th. But if you sign up for my newsletter at dmorsino.com, you'll get an exclusive look at the book and my playlist, which is Agent Graham's playlist, and gives you kind of a preview of what's going to happen.
Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.